Whether it's bad planning, bad luck, bad timing, or bad inventions, well-intentioned bad decisions have plagued history for thousands of years. Welcome to Historic Hindsight. Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom. Today we're going to talk to you about Amelia Earhart.
That's right, Johnny. Amelia Earhart. I actually had a pretty big crush on at least the actress that played her during Night at the Museum Part 2.
I was going to say, wasn't it like mostly, I feel like I've only seen her in like drawings and stuff. I know there's pictures that exist, but they're not like...
I'll throw some pictures up here. She did have a little bit of a weird gap in between her teeth, but like when she's in her pilot get up and shit, I don't know why, but even real life Amelia Earhart,
that's the thing about crushes. Gaps go from like being a put off to endearing and endurable when you're already in love with the person for some other reason.
And you put them in some cool little flight gear.
And you get them in a flight, yeah. I mean,
it's
like the reverse of the man in a uniform trope.
Right? Night at the Museum 2, I think, came out when I was in college, so I don't know why I would have still been in like that movie crush phase then, but I did. It's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to judge you for it.
All right. Well, if you are at home and you live under a rock and you have no idea who Amelia Earhart is, she was a badass aviation adventurer whose reputation would soar on a fateful night when she went missing on July 2nd, 1937, over the Pacific Ocean. So,
I'm sorry, when was flight? When did we first fly? Like 1905 or something?
Yeah. Like
this is like 30 years into it, and she's going to try to take one of those things over an ocean.
Well, over the entire, like, she was going to be the first female to circumnavigate the globe.
Why do people do this so quickly? Like, let the technology catch up before you push it to the limits. You know?
I tell you, when I did this research, I always thought like she was kind of like a badass pilot and was like, but she actually had a reputation for being a little, you probably should have done that in a plane. And you do know that way is north, right? Like,
so she's more of the fly by the seat of her pants than she trust your gut. And
she was.
Sometimes it's wrong.
Sometimes it's not. Yeah. Sometimes it. Well, we'll go at the beginning. We'll go. Little baby Amelia Earhart. She was born on July 24th. So tomorrow, because we're recording this today. So the day this airs,
that's helpful.
She was born, or hopefully the day that this airs.
Yeah,
sometimes we'll see. But anyways,
her birthday was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, she was born on July 24th, 1897. Jesus, that's a lot older than I thought she was. And anytime I hear 1800 as a birth date, I think of like Ulysses S. Grant or some other old archaic guy. I don't think of somebody who was like prominent in the 20s, which makes no sense because obviously like.
Right, 1897. You're a 1900s baby. It's like I was born in 84. I don't really consider myself an 80s child because I grew up in the 90s. So people born in like the 1890s, they grew up in the 1900s.
Yeah, but it's such.
So yeah, you hear 18 and it's like that. It was 2 millennia ago.
I mean, she was born before planes even existed yet. So I mean, there's that.
It wasn't 2 centuries ago, not millennia.
Yeah, millennia was. Anyways, whatever.
Little bit of a difference.
We are great at math. She was born in Atchison, Kansas, which was at the home of her grandfather, Alfred Gideon Otis, who was a former federal judge. So, we love to talk about how she's this badass woman pioneer, but in reality, she came from some really wealthy stock, which is what enabled her to do that. It's not like some random farm girl's the first one to become this badass pilot. It's my grandfather was a federal judge and had billions. So
yeah, we often just kind of look the other way when it comes to how people are able to do all these amazing things and be travel the world and do all this stuff. It's like, man, I got a job. Like, how are they affording to do? Oh, rich mommy and daddy.
Yep, and that's rich grandparents.
It's all family money.
This was her mother's father that was the wealthy one. Her father wasn't really liked all that much by the family. He was kind of a fuck up. I mean, for lack of a better word, he couldn't really hold a job all that well.
Yeah.
Kind
Well,
of
and he's
floated from
trying to
place to place to place,
marry into
marrying into
money.
wealth, and we're like, well, we can't have that. He seems like we don't want
He
that.
didn't get all the lucky breaks we got, and now he's still trying to find a job. Whereas I got those, and now I'm a millionaire.
She was raised by her mother not as a good girl, but was instead given the ability to kind of be a tomboy. She was criticized heavily for letting her daughter wear bloomers because heaven
Oh,
forbid we let a girl wear pants. And,
yeah.
and, and this is one of my favorite things I discovered about her. At 6 years old, she would run around the family property with a rifle shooting rats. Like,
Yes. Good girl.
awesome, right?
I mean, that's
Um,
what.
she loved the outdoors, big out, just a tomboy. Think of a little
Yeah.
tomboy that they're able to do. She was one of three children, although her oldest, sibling, he died in childbirth, so you really can't. I
As
mean,
you do in the
as
1800s.
you do in the 1800s, you can't really
Yeah.
count him. But she did have a younger sister, and they were, thick as thieves. They played everything together. In 1904, to kind of give you an idea of that, she was already a wild spirit. So in 1904, at the age of 7, she makes a homemade wooden ramp modeled after a roller coaster that she rode in St. Louis. Her well-documented first flight, is what it wound up becoming, ended dramatically when her cart that she was riding in flew off the ramp, soared in the air, crashed spectacularly,
Yeah.
tearing up her pants that she was wearing. And when she got out of this whole wreck, she looked at her baby sister and was like, "It was just like flying." Well, yeah,
Just
bitch,
like it.
you flew through the air. You
Yeah.
legitimately flew.
For a brief moment in time. I mean, it's kind of like that's basically what we do now with the Red Bull Flutog thing, right?
Yes, the Flutog. Yes, this is
Only they
exactly
go
what it
into a
is.
lake and not whatever.
It crash into the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little softer landing.
She would earn the nickname throughout her childhood of Millie, and she would pretty much keep that through most of her
Yeah, okay.
adult life, which I guess makes sense. Amelia Earhart, Millie.
Yeah, Millie,
Um,
Millie.
in 1914, excuse me, her grandfather would wind up passing away, and she would get a ass ton of money in a trust. But granted, I mean, it's a trust, so she can't just spend it willy-nilly just yet. But she's
Yeah.
17 years old. The worst part about this whole thing is when her grandmother died was that they had to sell the family house because Grandpa hated her father so much that he
He would
thought any money that would go to him or any kind of benefit that would go to him, he would piss away in drinking. So he said, "Screw you," sold the family property, and that was it. And like the money just went into a trust for
so
Amelia.
he just liquidated all his assets
Liquidated
basically.
all the
It was
assets.
like
Yep.
you don't get anything. I'm going to dictate who money goes to.
Exactly.
That is
Uh,
just I mean, that's just petty.
yeah,
It's
a
your
little bit.
daughter's husband. Like, come on, dude. It
She
helps your
would
daughter too.
right? She would say that this was the end of her childhood. Up until this point, she was homeschooled until the age of 12, where she did finally attend private school. And by homeschool, Johnny, I mean they had a governess that taught her. So again, this Amelia
Loaded.
Earhart is the pure definition of white privilege.
She would be so she basically if she were alive today and say everything else was the same but aviation was where it was then and she's doing her flights around the world, she'd be an Instagram influencer.
Yes, yep,
Like just
100%. She'd be
loaded,
in a plane.
family loaded, going doing whatever she wants.
Yep, yep.
Like she
Exactly.
would have crashed her plane because she was taking a selfie
While
over the
flying.
Pacific Ocean.
Well, Johnny, that might have happened.
If that happened,
We'll
oh
get
my
there.
God.
We'll get there. Not taking a
All
selfie,
right.
but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So I'm picturing her with a brownie trying to set it up, the old brownie cameras, trying to set that up in the cockpit.
uh, eventually, the family wound up making its way up to Chicago, where she would graduate from Chicago's Hyde Park High School in 1916, specifically because it was the high school with the best science department. She went shopping around in Chicago schools to find which one she wanted to go to, and went
Yeah.
to that one because, again, she had the money to shop around.
Yeah, I wonder if that school got a nice donation from anybody
I bet they might have.
around that time.
Well, Johnny, if you're sitting at home right now, we're sitting at home right now from
We
apart
are.
from each other over camera on the Zooms because we have a pandemic going on. Well, Johnny, there was another pandemic in 1918
Oh
that
yeah.
she herself had to participate in. So the Spanish flu hits the United States in 1918, and basically the winter of 1918, summer of 1919, mainly when the U.S. soldiers were coming home infected,
Right.
and we didn't quarantine them, and we're like, yeah, just do what you want, go spread it
Oh, it's
around.
a good thing we learned our lessons.
It is a good thing we learned our lesson. Well, she would become a nurse, and she would work at the Spandina Military Hospital, where she herself would become infected with the Spanish flu in November 1918 and have to be hospitalized herself. She would be discharged in December after having multiple painful surgeries to remove infected tissues from her sinuses because, well, antibiotics weren't all that prevalent yet,
Yeah, you just
and those surgeries were never really all that effective. So she
we'll
would
just rip
suffer
it
from,
out and hope we got all of it,
hope for the best, yeah,
because that's how
and
viruses work.
and she suffered from sinus issues pretty much the rest of her life. In fact, there are
Yeah.
actually some pictures of her with a drainage tube that she covers with a scarf on some of her flight,
Oh
flight
yeah.
pictures, because it would get so bad that she would actually have to get a drainage
Like,
tube
oh.
surgically implanted to kind of help with everything. So,
Yeah.
because I can't imagine the altitude, like the pressure difference from going to different altitudes would really help with your
Yeah.
sinuses.
Well, and just any sort of like G's that you're taking off with, and yeah, all the pressure changes for crying out, just
And
the
this isn't, yeah,
elevation.
these cabins aren't pressurized for comfort. We're a little
Yeah.
bit earlier than that. In 1919, Johnny, she would finally get her first experience with aircrafts, seeing them, experiencing them. She would go to see a World War I pilot fly at the Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto, Canada. She went with a friend, and the two were off in a field alone watching this event going on when the pilot decided that he would dive at them to see if he could scare them. So imagine just being out in the field, watching an air show today, and one of the planes just veering off and like coming straight at you is what happened.
Like I wouldn't be happy about that today with like I don't know. I wouldn't even be okay with like the Blue Angels doing something like that. Even though I know they can put those wherever they want them to, and they're not going to hit me, but I can't imagine, like, you don't know if that plane's going to actually complete the rest of that flight.
Yeah, a World War I biplane.
Like
Good luck.
Yeah, it's held up so far. It's done fine.
To give
But
you an idea of the class of aircraft that the World War I biplanes were, they are actually very, very small, and you don't like. I had a problem visualizing that until I went to the Dayton Air Force Museum.
mm-hmm.
But these planes are so small that they actually qualify as ultralights
Yeah.
in modern, and you don't even need licenses to fly
Yep.
them because they're so small and the engines are so small in them. So imagine somebody in an
Yeah,
ultralight
it's like
flying at you.
yeah, that's what always strikes me when I go to like the air museum or whatever. You look at the combat suits of all the
Yeah,
pilots and all of these, and I'm not a big dude. I'm like 5'5". Like, I'm not big. And I look at those and I'm like, oh, I couldn't get into that. It's because these
I
pilots are
would
tiny, and then
be,
you look at the cockpits and it's like, oh, that's why. Like, it's snug.
Johnny, you would be like the size, well, the
Well, I
height
got to
to
lose
fit
some
in.
weight.
Yeah, you gotta lose a couple pounds. You'd be
Post high
the
school, I would have been a pilot.
yeah,
Yeah,
you'd be the
I was
height to get in.
140, 5'5". Like, yeah, I could
I
have been a
might be
pilot.
okay with weight, but I at 5'9" or 5'10",
Yeah,
it'd be a bit cramped for me.
your knees are going to be in your chin.
During this experience, she was quoted because she did write a book. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't remember about Amelia Earhart. Besides being an amazing pilot, she was actually a writer as well, and she had
Huh.
several books that she did write. And
Like
one of the books she did describe
fiction
this as,
was it?
like, a lot of it was
Or
autobiography kind of stuff, but
um,
yeah,
yeah,
lame.
so she's an Instagram model. She's an
Yes,
influencer.
yes,
Like
she's an
through and through. Like
influencer.
she's an early 1900s influencer.
Yeah, yes, yes, she is. She did write on this instant that she said, I believe that the little red airplane said something to me as it swished by. She wasn't deterred. She didn't run away. She just stood there, and as it swished by, she's like, damn it, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
So
Grandpa, I want a plane.
pretty much. She would join Columbia University to study the medical field, but she would only last about a year because she got bored.
Like, she had to have been just brilliant though, right? Like,
Yeah, she was brilliant. I mean, she wasn't a privately educated, smart woman. There's no getting around that. She would, after leaving Columbia University, she would reunite with her bio parents in California, where on December 28th, 1920, she took her first ride in an airplane with a pilot by the name of Frank Hawk, who would become a very famous air racer of the time. So again, we got a little bit of money.
Like Red
We
Bull
got
air
board.
racing, like they had that back
Well,
then.
yes, but back then, yes,
I mean,
yeah.
obviously not what it is today, but they had
Oh, it's
races.
actually even scary. Yeah, yeah, it's scarier back then because the type of planes that they were using back then, especially like when you get into the 1930s, right before World War II, they are the smallest little, like they're short, fat, and stubby, and they have so much air torque when the propellers are going on that you basically, if you make the slightest miscalculation on that stick, your plane's in the ground.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
like
mean, have you seen what they are today?
they're a little bit longer and have a little bit
They're
better
they're like
aerodynamic, but
12-foot jets.
yeah,
They're rockets that they just fly through this. It's insane.
yeah, they're
Like
crazy what they.
the difference between like the very first race cars and the, Formula 1 Indy 500 cars now is monstrous. The difference between those first airplanes and what they're doing with the Red Bull jets and all these crazy, F-14s or whatever they're on. I don't F-20. I don't know what they're on now. But like
F-35, I
that
think, is the
gap is
newest
just
one.
insane.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-bogglingly crazy how, and we'll
How
get there when
fast
we
we
start.
went from flying a plane to outer space.
Well, we'll get there when we start talking about some of the times on how she, like when she starts going across the Atlantic and stuff, and how long it took her to do that back then versus what it is today. Yeah, the technology increase in aerodynamics has been mind blowing. But she takes her
Mhm.
first ride in 1920 at the
So
cost of
23
$10.
years old.
Yeah, 23 years old at the cost of $10, and
Uh,
which is $128.90 today, which again is another example of like privilege because your average
right.
person isn't going to have $10 to get up into a plane.
Right. But that's actually not too much different than the cost of doing something like that now.
Yeah, it's not
Like
too
if you
much.
wanted to go up into somebody's private plane, it's gonna be around $80 to $120. Like
Yep, and
it's
it
gonna be
was only
that.
a 10-minute flight, but again, that's kind of similar to what it is
Yeah,
nowadays.
you
About a
go
ten
up
minute
and
flight.
down. I mean, now you'd
Yep.
probably get about an hour out of it, but
Of this first flight, she says by the time that she got up to 200 or 300 feet off the ground, I had to fly. So at that point, she's hooked. She's in the aircraft. She's got to do
yeah,
this herself. So she winds up going out and
200
getting.
feet up. That's it. That's not very high.
No, not very. When she gets out of this plane, she decides that she wants to go and become a pilot herself, but it costs $1,000 for pilot lessons at this time, which is $12,889 today, which is actually about what it is today
It's
to become
the
a,
same
like, I
type
mean,
of thing.
it really is. It's not it's not that far. But I think I looked up getting a pilot license. I found like a 2-week course down in Texas, which is
Yeah.
around like 10 grand.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of that 2-week course, like you live and you breathe, like you camp there for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and by the end of it, you actually have a pilot license. But
Yeah,
it was
and it's
about
like
10
the
grand.
small craft, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Pilot's
Cessna.
license, yeah.
Yep. She does work odd jobs as a photographer, truck driver, stenographer, and worked at the local telephone company until she was able to manage saving up that $1,000. Of course, the trust kind of helped. Some of the money came from that
Yeah.
trust. And her mom herself actually did put in a little bit of that money for that $1,000. On January 3rd, 1921, at Kinner Field near Long Beach, California, she took her first flying lessons with a pilot by the name of Nita Schnook. So one of the very first female pilots, a pioneer female aviator herself. Her first
And then they
lessons would
let her
be,
teach?
yeah, this woman, they let this woman teach. It's crazy, right?
Aviation field. I had no idea how progressive you were.
Aviation field was
Kudos.
pretty progressive right from the get-go. Because, yeah, I mean, I mean, granted, they weren't flying in World War I, but they were let fly pretty quick. Even
Yeah.
even minorities. I mean, you had a lot of black pilots during World War I time frame as well. Like, so it's
Yeah.
not.
Oh, that's great. Good for them.
Yeah, they were pretty well. And let me rephrase that. You had black pilots that were able to fly with the French under the Lafayette d'Escadrille.
No.
I mean, but still, like they were American.
I mean, this is
that were
this
flying
is the
underneath the
early
French.
1900s. There are lines that can't be crossed.
Her first flight took place in the Curtiss JN-4, which was nicknamed the Canuck. She chose a makeover right before she started her pilot license, like women do. Hi-oh, got to do a makeover. So she cut her hair short, like all the other female aviators of the time, and she got
I,
herself a nice little leather flying jacket. But she didn't want everybody to think she was an amateur, so she slept in it for a couple of days to make it nice and worn before going for her first lessons.
yeah. I feel like the cutting of the hair is more of a practical
Yeah,
decision.
yeah, especially if you're in an open air cockpit. Although
Like,
by the time she starts flying, they were mostly closed air cockpits. But yeah,
yeah, but even
especially
in
if you're
just
in
the
an open air
ease of,
cockpit,
yeah.
you definitely want you
Even in
want
a
to cover
closed
hair.
cockpit, I mean, you can open the window, crack the windows in them
Yeah,
and
yep.
stuff, and get airflow.
On October 22nd, 1922, she would set her first of of many records for women when she flew her Canary plane to 14,000 feet, which was the highest a woman had ever flown.
Now,
By the way,
canary,
after
I assume, is the type of plane and not like the color. It's not just a canary yellow one.
6 months after her first pilot lessons, Johnny, she bought her very first plane. Again, privilege, which was a Kenner Airstar biplane, which was bright yellow, and that's why she named it the Canary.
Okay, so it was what she named it the
She named it the
canary.
Canary. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yep. Her flying career, however, was almost ended in early 1924 when she was forced to sell her plane and her car as an investment in a gypsum mine failed her and her entire inheritance was depleted. So basically, she went out and made a private investment. It
She
didn't
made a
pay off.
bad
Now all your inheritance is gone and you're out of money. So she had to sell her car and her plane.
gypsum mine is what she thought she'd invest in.
That's what she thought would make the money, I guess.
She should have taken more business classes and less science and medicine classes in college, I guess.
Probably. She did get her pilot license on May 15th, 1923, and was the 16th woman to do so. And
All
she also
right.
suffered a bout of sinus issues in 1924, along with the financial issues. She had a sinus issues that hospitalized her again with more surgeries that were minorly successful. But again, she always had issues with sinuses her
Right.
whole career. Her parents would wind up divorcing in 1924, and she would move to Boston with her mother, where after failed ventures in school as a teacher, she would become a social worker. So shout out to
Wait,
social workers.
1924?
Yeah, 1924.
So she's
Like
27,
yeah. So she
living with her mom.
yeah she's lost all of her money and
And
her
went back.
inheritance. She's had to sell her plane. Her
Do
mom
you,
gets divorced.
do you
She moves
think
with her mom to Boston.
do you think that her parents getting divorced had anything to do with
The
her
fact that she's
losing
27
her
living at home
inheritance and then moving back in at 25 years old?
probably didn't help anything. It definitely didn't help anything. Um, she would become a social worker to kind of pay the bills. But during this time, she was
I mean,
also
that's not a good decision either.
no, it's really not. Trust me, as a social worker, it's not a
Not
good
pay,
decision.
not paying too many bills.
I'm not paying too many bills. No, I do get good insurance though, I guess. So there's that,
Hey, there
which
you
is a
go.
very American thing for European listeners when we choose between a good paying job or a job that provides
Or,
good insurance.
or do we want to live and be healthy?
She would actually become a prominent member of the American Aeronautical Society in Boston and would become the vice president of that chapter.
All right.
And then we fast forward a little bit to 1927 when Charles Lindbergh, who was another famous male aviator, would become the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. This led to a lot of like, when's the first woman going to do it?
Yeah.
Enter a woman by the name of Amy Guess, who was the first to try this venture. She made it very public, like, hey, I'm going to be the first female to fly across the Atlantic. And she gets to the point where she's about ready to do it. And she goes, "No, that's really dangerous. I don't want to do it. Never mind. I'll pay somebody else to do it, but
That's
I'm going to go ahead and bow out."
you want
Which
to know
is
what?
probably
I would
best
give her a
part.
hard time for it, but yeah, same. I get
Yeah,
it.
makes sense.
Like
So
probably a pretty heady play.
basically a bid came out for a crew to fly across the Atlantic, to fly a woman across the Atlantic. So this is the first woman to fly across it. So she doesn't have to actually be a pilot,
The
just
first woman
ride
to
in a
be on a
plane
plane that
to fly
crosses
across
the
it. This is
Atlantic.
this is how early we are into airplanes, that there hasn't been a woman on a plane, just riding on a plane across the Atlantic.
Who was the first cat?
The cat? Why
Yeah,
would I look
to
up?
fly across the Atlantic Ocean
Well,
on a plane
Johnny,
because it
Google
doesn't.
that
That's
and
such a
see.
meaningless thing to be the first passenger across.
Well,
That's
while at
meaningless.
work one Well, at work one afternoon in April 1928, Earhart gets a phone call from Captain Hilton H. Rayleigh, who asks her, "Would you like to fly across the Atlantic with me?" She says, sure. I got nothing else going on. Let's roll." She would accompany pilot Wilmer Stoltz and co-pilot mechanic Luis Gordon on the flight, but she was basically just a passenger. She did get the job to
Yeah.
write the flight log, but
Oh,
you don't
how
have
fun.
nearly enough flying experience to actually pilot anything or co-pilot anything. So just here, write in a notebook
So
about your
I
experience.
mean, they hired a secretary.
They sure did.
I mean, knowledgeable because flight logs are not easy to deal with and to come up with. I mean, it's a lot to figure out.
She was the secretary, yeah.
But yeah, it's glorified. Like it's
So the team departed Trepassey Harbor, Newfoundland, in a Fokker F-7B, which was named Friendship, on June 17th, 1928. They would land near Burrowport, South Wales, exactly 20 hours and 40 minutes later. So almost 21 hours to cross from Canada, Newfoundland, Canada, to Wales.
yeah, they really picked the shortest trip for this little cross Atlantic
And
trip,
it
didn't
still
they?
took 21 hours.
How
The Concorde, the Concorde jet, when we were flying that, which granted we don't fly it anymore, but it was a super jet, that
yeah,
was a commercial jet, would
yeah,
make the trip from New York City
yeah.
to London, England in 3 hours.
Oh, I thought it was shorter than that.
Uh, it might have been. I think it was around 3 hours. It
I
might have
thought
even
it
been shorter than 3. But even at
yeah.
3 hours, Johnny,
So I thought it was like an hour and a half.
come on, this tells you how far airplanes have
So
come.
I mean, what kind of speed are they going on? They're just crawling.
Yeah, they couldn't have been going all that fast. No. This would make her the first female to cross the Atlantic in a plane, for whatever that means. And Johnny, the press would fall in love with her due to her physical resemblance to Lindbergh herself. She got the nickname Lady Lindbergh, which isn't that sweet, Johnny. Even somebody who's being a pioneer as a woman, we can't let her have the credit on her own. We have to attribute it to a man,
I
Lady
mean,
Lindbergh.
behind every good woman, right? You're right about New York to London is 2 hours 52 minutes and 59 seconds.
For the Concorde, yeah,
Yeah,
that's book. That is
1996 they did that flight in
booking
that
it.
time.
In August 1928, Earhart would become the first woman to try to fly solo across the North American continent. So she would become the first one to,
Oh,
hey, she flew solo across
now
the
we're
entire
talking.
continent.
All right, we're
So she's
doing
now
something
actually
now.
doing something. She's becoming a pilot. She would take fourth place in her first attempt at a competitive air racing in 1929.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all, during the first Santa Monica to Cleveland Women's Air Derby, which was nicknamed the Powder Puff Derby, Johnny.
Well, I mean, God.
You gotta love good old fashioned sexism that we had.
But we still do this shit.
Oh yeah, we sure do.
Like we had power. Do you remember Powder Puff football?
Yeah, I remember Powder Puff football.
Like,
Where heaven forbid we let them tackle each other. We
oh
do
God, no,
two-hand
it's got to be
touch.
flag football.
Oh,
Yeah.
and what? Oh
Oh,
man,
we did
remember
flag football for
the
at our
lingerie
school.
league flag football? Oh God.
Oh, that was like after the XFL started to be it.
Yeah,
Came
they
around.
tried.
Yeah, that's right. They had the lingerie league. Oh my
Yeah,
God. They had like shoulder pads, but then like not a
tackle.
jersey.
They had a helmet and shoulder pads, and then lingerie, and then it was
But
flag
I think
football.
the shoulder pad, and I don't know, I can't remember, but didn't they not have, or
Yeah,
maybe it
the
was just
boobs were
super
exposed.
short.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because
it
the
didn't
boobs.
have
Yeah,
that
the
normal
boobs.
like chest thing that comes
Yeah,
down.
no, the boobs are still
Covers.
definitely out. Yeah. Yep.
God, what on earth was the early 2000s?
In 1930, Earhart would become an official of the National Aeronautic Association, so she's becoming recognized, in the United States as an actual, not just a woman aviator, but an actual just a good aviator.
Yeah, just somebody who can fly a plane, which is hard to do,
Yep.
especially when it doesn't
Then,
fly itself at all. It's just,
there's no
you do
autopilot in
it.
these planes or auto landing or any of that kind of garbage. No. In 1931, she would set the world altitude record, this time at 18,415 feet. She was flying in her Pitcairn PCA-2 because, God, we have to have weird names for planes. Which this was actually just a publicity stunt for the Beech Nut Chewing Gum Company, who basically bought her a plane and said, hey, can you fly it as high as you can because we want advertising money?
So that is where Red Bull got their marketing team from. They probably just bought out that Beach Nut company's marketing team and like, all right, what do you got for us? Like, I don't know, make people do a bunch of crazy shit. How about you have somebody skydive out of space? That'd be cool.
Hey, credit to them though.
And they did. Then
I
they
mean,
did the thing.
And we have talked about Red Bull unnecessarily like 5 times in this episode already.
I mean,
So
the only thing I
unofficial
know about
sponsor, Red
literally the
Bull.
only thing I know about Red Bull is that they do flying stuff and make people break records. So it
During this
happens to be
period,
that's what the pod's about.
that's what the pod's about. Yeah. During this period, she would become involved in the 99s, which was an organization of female pilots that provided moral support in advancing the cause of women in aviation. So this is a group that would help women become pilots. Good for them. And Johnny, she would finally settle down, and she would marry her publisher George P. Putnam after he proposed to her 6 separate times, and she denied him on 6 separate times. But damn it, on the 7th, Johnny, she said, "Sure, why not? I got nothing else going on." But good for him. That's persistence.
No, that's creepy. And being a stalker, take a fucking hint, pal. And like George P. What? I already forgot his name because he's so uninteresting.
Well, Johnny, don't feel bad because she would not take his name, and he would actually.
Putnam, was that it?
Yeah, from that point on, he would actually have the nickname Mr. Earhart.
There you go.
Shows you
I'm telling you, this early 1900s aviation and their progressive behavior is astounding. It's great. I'm learning a lot about that.
Yeah, right.
Where would the women's movement be without these guys?
Right. On the morning of May 20th, 1932, a 34-year-old Earhart set off for the Harbor Grace, Newfoundland in her single-engine Lockheed Vega 5B to emulate Charles Lindbergh's solo flight over the Atlantic. So she's going to do what he did.
She's like, all right, yeah, I can do that.
Herself.
Yeah.
Yep. So she flew the same plane from the same location, but she's doing it herself.
This is that Nike commercial that anything you can do, I can do better. Yeah, they had like Mia Hamm and I don't know, something. It was in the 90s.
It was the 90s. 90s were also a weird time.
I mean,
a farmhand witnessed her landing in England and asked, "How far did you fly from?" At which point she promptly responded, "America." Yeah. But damn it, Earhart, you really didn't. You flew from Newfoundland. That's Canada. So it's not really America. I mean, yes, you started in America, but that's not that you didn't you flew from Newfoundland. So, which granted, I mean, I guess at home you could be like, that's a part of North America. But you know what? No.
Everybody knows that's not
Canadian
what she
States
meant.
of America. It's the United States of America, damn it.
Yeah, nobody ever talks about North America as just America.
No, they sure don't.
We know what
her flight, Johnny. Her flight actually lasted 14 hours 56 minutes, so she cut off a hell of a lot of time.
Wait, with the same plane?
When she was a passenger, no, that she was in a different plane when she went with the crew by herself. It got it down to 14 hours 56 minutes, but still, that's impressive. Do a road trip without stopping for 15 hours. Now, granted, I'm sure she's like peeing in a bottle or something.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a lot though. No, and you don't have. I went from Indy to Boston without stopping.
It's still impressive.
That was a lot. It sucked.
It sucks. And she had to do that.
But I had the option to stop. I could have.
Yeah, she could. No.
She didn't have that option.
She had to contest with strong northerly icy winds and mechanical problems during the whole trip. So it's kind of lucky that she made it.
Yeah.
She did wind up landing in Derry, Northern Ireland. So, we made it to Ireland. Yay, Irish.
All right. So, where was she supposed to land? Did she know? Was that where she was supposed to land?
I don't know if that's
or did she just kind of space out and figure out, you know what, I'll land over there?
I'm going to go ahead and guess she might have not landed in the exact spot that she was supposed to because she did have that reputation of,
so
not having the best sense of direction at all times.
I've told you about my landing in the wrong spot story, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I landed at
you were with God. Who was that with it? You guys went.
So I had a coworker who had a plane, and it was a little Cessna, whatever, 4-seater, and so he took us up, and then he's like, okay, he was letting each of us fly, and he, we were holding a stick. We weren't doing anything. It's like slowly turn a little bit. But he's like, all right, well, look around the horizon. We were trying to go to Peru from Indianapolis, and Kokomo's kind of in that area. And so we were going, and he said, look for an airstrip. And so I was looking for an airstrip, found one. He's like, all right, just kind of steer towards it. And then when we, got close enough, he took over, landed, looked around, and goes, this isn't the Peru airport. He's like, I think we're at Grissom, which Grissom is an Air Force base in central Indiana, for those of you who don't know. And so he called the control tower to tell him, I think I landed on your airstrip. And they go, no, we didn't see anybody come in. Like, we don't think you're here. He goes, no, I'm looking over at your flags. Like, we're here. They're like, where are you? And he told him, and we had like 6 cop cars come flying around the corner. They're military base police cop cars come flying around the corner, and they interrogated us, asking us all these questions about what our aliases were and if we had any other, names or where we came from, what we were doing, and all this bullshit.
They call me Tater Salad.
Yeah.
You caught me. You caught the tater.
But yeah, it was quite the experience.
I don't know what's more scary about that story. The fact that you guys were able to land in an Air Force base without being impeded, or the fact that they didn't even know you landed. Like,
that they had no idea we were there. And like, it's an active, like,
yeah, it's an active
on
base,
one
yeah.
side of us, there were lined up 18 of those big, like, cargo refueling, whatever planes. Like, and then they're just like, no. And they told us we didn't land there. We said, we think we accidentally landed on your airstrip. And they said, no, you didn't.
No, it's impossible. Whatever,
Like,
sure here. Well, Johnny, for the solo flight, she would earn the Flying Cross from Congress, the Distinguished Flying Cross from Congress. She would earn the Cross of the Knight of the Legion of Honor from the French government, and she would earn the Gold Medal of the National Geographic Society. So she would be honored by multiple places across the globe for doing this. Great.
Filling up that trophy case.
Filling up that trophy case. On January 11th, 1935, she would become the first aviator to fly solo from Honolulu, Hawaii to Oakland, California. Why you would go to Oakland, California, I don't know, but she did.
I mean, maybe it used to be nicer.
Maybe she wanted to go see a Raiders game. Although I don't know if they were playing in Oakland in 1935, but maybe. We don't know. Hey, they were good when, at the beginning of football history.
100 years ago or so.
They might be good again eventually.
I mean, they got Gruden for the next, 9 years?
I think we're down to like
8
7
years?
with him. I
Holy
think we're
cow.
down to 7.
Time
so
flies.
I'm counting because he's not been. This will be his 3rd year coaching. So.
Oh, okay.
So we have 7 more years.
Well, maybe once you pay him $40 million or $50 million, he'll put together a good team for you.
Maybe. Sure, shit hasn't gotten any better. So now let's get to the point where things get interesting. She tries her flight around the world, and she would wind up ultimately disappearing. So in 1935, Earhart joined the Purdue University, again, shout out to Indiana, and was a visiting faculty member to counsel women on careers and technical advisors for the Department of Aeronautics. So she works at Purdue to counsel women on how to be pilots or how to have careers in being a pilot.
I'm sorry. I have to be against her being a voice for people about what to do, because the shit she's doing is crazy. Like, if you want a career in aviation, great, fine, good. Fly a commercial jet from A to B. Don't do the shit she's doing. It's a terrible representative.
Well, she was. In early 1936, she started her plans to fly across the world. She got bored with teaching again. On March 17th, 1937, Earhart and her crew flew the first leg of their first attempt around the world.
Okay, so how does this around the world trip work? Because obviously it's not.
It's not going to be in one day. She would fly around the world. She would make multiple stops across Africa, Europe, Asia, and then
so it's just a flying marathon, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So she starts her first leg of the first attempt. They go from Oakland, California to Honolulu, Hawaii. They do land successfully in Honolulu. She was supposed to go to Howland Island next, but the plane's landing gear gave out during her takeoff, and the plane skid on its belly, destroying all of its radio equipment.
Uh-oh.
This radio equipment was important
You don't say.
because it's how they navigated. They were navigating via radio waves. So without it, they could not navigate. The radio operator, whose last name was Manning, decided to call it quits after this accident and said, you know what, I'm done. Part of the reason that he called it quits was because, again, her reputation of not necessarily knowing the best directions,
Yeah,
not necessarily taking logical approach. He was a risk taker.
right.
Now, I can do it. Screw it.
Yeah. That radio broke, and she's like, "Oh, I don't need that."
So some people on the ground said that the accident happened because landing gear tire blew.
Okay.
But the co-pilot and the radio operator said, yeah, no, she screwed up. Like she hopped the plane. So she took off and then slammed down hard because she didn't have
And
enough
blew it that
airspeed
way.
to lift. And then when she slammed down, that's when the front landing gear gave way and then the plane just skid.
That sounds like a more likely thing to have had happen
Probably,
as far
yeah.
as an accident like that.
So, well, first attempt is scrapped. She does wind up making it back to the States, and they would start their second attempt, but this time, damn it, Johnny, we're going to go in the opposite direction. We had bad luck going through the Pacific first, so we're going to end with the Pacific coming back.
Okay, I like that train of thought. Also, doesn't wind mostly blow that way?
I have
East
no
to
idea.
west? Where we
I
are,
don't
it's mostly east to west. I don't know about the rest of the world. Seems like it'd all be the same, though.
Her second attempt would begin on June 1st, and after numerous stops in South America, Africa, the Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, they would land in Lao, New Guinea on June 29th, 1937. So they have gone 22,000 miles, and they only had 7,000 left. So at this point, the only leg journey left is the Pacific. She's going to fly from Lao, New Guinea to Howland Islands, and then to Honolulu, and then back to Oakland, California.
What are
That's
these
the plan.
islands before Honolulu?
The Howland Island. The
Howland
same
Island?
island that she was supposed to go to on
Right,
the
but
first
where-
trip but crashed.
Is it just a small Pacific island? Or
It's a
is
small
it,
Pacific island that's in between Lao, New Guinea and Honolulu. So just
which New Guinea's down by north of Australia, right?
yeah, yes,
Like
yes,
it's that
yes.
island and archipelago or whatever.
Yep. On July 2nd, 1937, at midnight, Earhart and Noonan, her co-pilot, would take off from Lao, New Guinea in their heavily loaded electric plane. Electra, not electric. But
I was
Electra,
gonna, what?
Yeah,
They're
it's not
doing this in an electric
Electra.
plane?
No, it's the plane's name is Electra.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Like I said, their intended destination was the Howland Island. To give you an idea of what this island is, it is a very, very, very small island.
It's got to have a runway on it, right?
They have a runway on it.
but that's it.
Yeah, it's a flat sliver of a land. It is 6,500 feet long by 1,600 feet wide. So
that's a runway.
It's a runway.
Like two or three of them, maybe.
It has it's 10 feet above. It is 10 feet above the sea level, and 10 feet above the sea level, and 2,556 miles away from Lao, New Guinea.
So like when you're taking off, you have to hope that like a speedboat doesn't go by real quick and make a big wave, and like knock you out of the sky.
Pretty much. Woo, they don't. It's not much of an island. They had 1,100 gallons of fuel on board, which might prove to be a fatal mistake for them because they did not fill the fuel tank full.
Okay.
They were trying to save weight, which is something that pilots do.
Yeah,
and they did have enough.
You have to, that's part of it.
They do have enough fuel on board to get them there, and then enough of a leeway if, oops, we made a mistake and we missed.
Yeah, I think the rule on that is like you want like 30 minutes or an hour
or something
of
like extra fuel than what you need.
Is what you calculate.
Yeah, they are again using radio operators the radio to navigate. They have the help of a U.S. naval vessel to try to help guide them in that is stationed at Howland Island. Around 3 a.m., Earhart is reported that her altitude is 10,000 feet and that they were going to reduce altitude due to thick clouds. Around 5 a.m., Earhart reports that their altitude is 7,000 feet and they have a speed of 150 knots.
Okay.
Their last known position was reported around the Nukumanu Islands, which was about 800 miles away from their destination. They had a call that was asking for bearings around 6:45 in the morning, when Earhart herself on that radio call estimated that they were about 100 miles out.
Okay.
The U.S. ship was the Itasca, which was at the Howland Island and was guiding them in, but they were having radio issues themselves. They could hear her, but she couldn't hear them.
Been there.
So at this point, shit.
Yeah, that's a bad thing. And I'm guessing she didn't know that they could hear her, but she couldn't hear them.
Yeah, she was
right?
just
You have no
calling.
way of
Yeah.
knowing that.
Well, we do have one of her last radio broadcasts at 7:42 in the morning. A radio transmission is received, and this is what's recorded, and I'll quote it here.
This is always weird to me.
Itasca, we must be on you, but we cannot see you. Gas is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying at 1,000 feet. It's eerie because,
Yeah.
it was reported that the signal was the loudest possible signal, indicating that they were right on top of them.
Yeah.
In her last known transmission, which occurred at 8:43, Earhart broadcast, "We are on line 157-337. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6210 kilocycles. Wait," it cuts out, and then a few minutes later, the frequency changes to 3105 kilohertz with a transmission that was logged as questionable. So she switches over radio signals. They can't hear her. What they were able to make out is she said that she was running on line north and south, and then the rest of it was garbled. So by 8:43 a.m., they had known that she had flown away from the ship Itasca, and they knew that she was lost at this point.
Yeah.
Because her radio signal was loud and clear, so she was right on top of them, and then it went to garbled, so she had missed the island.
Yeah, she missed it and didn't see it. Well, and if it was cloudy, foggy, whatever, she probably just didn't see it.
Exactly. Beginning 1 hour after the last radio transmission, a massive search party was sent out. The official search efforts would last until July 19th, 1937, at $4 million or $71,610,227.78 today. So a massive amount of money was spent trying to find her.
That's wild.
They would wind up pronouncing her dead on January 5th, one day later. Wow, you didn't even wait till the search party was done, guys. Way to
Holy
be
cow.
assholes.
But I mean, honestly.
Well, and they pronounced her dead because they found proof that she crashed, but because they found no proof that she was alive anywhere.
Right.
So she's dead. Now we get the speculation as to what Now we get the speculation as to what happened. So I'm going to end this episode real quick with a couple of conspiracy theories, Johnny.
Oh, yes. Start with the one where she's alive.
You want me to start with that one or end with that one? I was going to end with that one.
All right, you can end
that
with
one was
that
the
one.
most wild one. So I'll start with
that's the most real one, Tommy. I've done my research.
Okay. Well, the most obvious, like the real answer was that she crashed into the Pacific and sunk.
Yeah.
She ran out of fuel. She ditched into the ocean. The boat
guess how big the fucking ocean is.
It is fucking huge. There has been no signs of wreckage on any of the adjacent islands prior to this point. The most logical conclusion is that she would have tried to circle back to find the island because it was the closest location to her.
Yeah.
When you're running low on fuel, you're not going to frig around by wasting time. You're going to go, all right, well, there should be an island here.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't wait for the next exit.
Her own radio transmission says, "I'm running low on fuel."
Yeah.
And that was an hour before her last transmission. So the official report is basically that she had to have ditched it in the ocean, and when they ran out of fuel, and that was that. They drowned at sea somewhere.
Yeah, now her plane is a coral reef at the bottom of the ocean or something.
So the second
or at least barnacles are covering it.
Yeah, right. So the second story that goes around is that maybe she made it to Gardner Island, which was a nearby island, and had marooned there and was starved to death. Now, this one does have a little bit of a degree of merit. The hypothesis begins when they actually find a human skull on that island. They also pair that up.
A human skull on an island in the middle of the Pacific?
Well, bear with me here, Johnny. When they lost radio signal, she does describe going kind of south, which would indicate that maybe when she missed the island, she knew she missed the island and thought, well, there's the Gardner Island that was to the south. Maybe it would be reasonable that, all right, I missed that exit. I'll just go to the next exit.
Okay.
It's reasonable,
Give it a
but
shot. But
uh,
is this an island? This I
there's no
imagine.
landing strip there though,
Right,
so
I imagine this is an island that is like a volcanic
uninhabited.
island that nobody's on, and there's nothing
Yeah,
there. And
it's
okay.
uninhabited. Uh, that skull though in the 90s, the bones were the skull that was found. They decided at first couldn't have been a female bone. They thought it was more likely a male skull, and the male skull didn't really meet the dimensions of Noonan, so they scrapped it pretty early, thinking that she was there. In the 90s, however, they do a DNA test, which suggests that it could be female, but that DNA test also showed that the skull or the DNA was inconclusive to be Earhart's, and that the skull itself was a bit too small to be Earhart's as well. So it
The
wasn't her.
DNA test showed that the skull was too small to be
Well, not
her.
the DNA test, but the
The
examination of the
people who
skull.
were doing that, okay. I was gonna say
Who
that's a
did the DNA
weird
test
DNA
examine the skull?
test.
Well, no. The problem with this theory, however, is that the Navy thoroughly searched that island a week after her disappearance and found they did find signs of recent, habitation, like people were there, but they found no signs of Earhart, no signs of a plane, and
You're gonna
in
find a
19
plane.
in 1928 there was a boat crash called the SS Norwich City, which crashed there, and a lot of survivors made its way onto that island. So the signs of
Yeah.
people being there could have been from that 1928 boat crash as well, which is
Yeah.
likely where that skull came from.
Right. Or any number of pirate vessels.
There was also in World War II a plane that had crashed in that vicinity, which could have been that pilot
Yeah.
as well, because this skull was found in like the 1940s, like late 1940s, early 1950s. So there is a picture in 1938 of the island, which does show what appears to be possibly a landing gear sticking out of the ocean. But I'm going to call bullshit on that because I've seen this picture and I'll put it up on the YouTubes. It's so grainy. God, it could have been
No.
a duck in the water for all anybody knows.
Yeah, all those pictures are useless. I mean, you can. It's one. It's like the Rorschach test or Rorschach, whatever those are. It's just an ink blot. It's all right. What do you see? Now, if I tell you that I see a little bit of landing gear sticking out, and this might be a crash site, can you see that?
To make matters worse, there is a private group called the Tiger, which is the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, which has been searching for Amelia Earhart at these islands since 1988.
Wait, hold on. Back up on that acronym.
It's Tiger.
Yeah.
It's so they're using
Yeah, that's what
the
I'm
international group.
getting at.
Yeah.
Who uses the as a letter in your acronym?
They've been searching since 1988, and on that island they have uncovered some tools, an aluminum panel, which could have been possibly from the Electra that Amelia Earhart had, because she had an aluminum patch on part of the plane, which it could have been this. The aluminum was dated to manufacture in the 1930s, so again, it could have been a part of that. An oddly cut piece of clear plexiglass, a jar of the jar's shape matches that of anti-freckle cream, which I guess Amelia Earhart had freckles and she didn't like it, so it's
Anti-freckle
possible.
cream?
Yeah, it's possible that she might have had
God.
freckle cream. Again, being a woman.
Well, I mean, we got mad at Hitler for the whole Aryan race
Thing.
thing. Like, we're gonna
and
make
they
people start covering up their freckles and shit.
and they did find a heel from a shoe that dated around the 1930s. So because there was a heel there from a shoe, it had to be a woman's shoe. So it definitely had to be Earhart's, right?
And you reckon she wore her heels when she went on her round the world journey?
Right.
Do you?
But the problem with all of this comes that in 2017, the aluminum panel was proven to be from a C-47B, which was a World War II plane that crashed in the area. So they proved that wreckage was
Makes
from
way
that
more
crash.
sense.
The DNA was inconclusive. And finally, the guy who found the Titanic actually participated in the search and used.
Because he's good at finding things, right?
Yeah,
So
he
might
used
as well.
sonar and radio waves and all that,
Good for
every
him.
available technology to him. Last year, Johnny, in 2019, in October of 2019, they searched the entire area around that island and found no signs of any plane wreckage anywhere.
Yeah.
On the island, in the ocean, nothing. So she didn't crash there.
No.
And this is my favorite one, where she's
Here we
still
go.
alive.
This is it. I mean,
And
I obviously I don't think she's still alive now. She'd be 130 years old, 20 years old, whatever.
yeah. But so it stems, and people say that she was actually a U.S. spy, and she was
Likely. I like
captured
this. Okay.
by the Japanese in
Hmm.
1937. And the biggest problem I have with this hypothesis is we weren't at odds with Japan yet. Like we were
Yeah.
still in like happy negotiation times.
Um,
Why would they have captured her? It wouldn't have made any
she
sense.
wouldn't. She wouldn't have let the Japanese capture her.
I doubt it. The rumor is that she was captured and was sent to Saipan, and it largely stems from local people in Saipan that said that they had seen an American female aviator that was being held captive. The History Channel, Johnny, so you know it's 100% accurate because it's the History Channel, did a documentary in 2017 that proposed that there was a photograph that they had found in the National Archives that showed a picture of the Marshall Islands where somebody that looked like Nuhin was in that picture, her co-pilot, and that there was
Oh,
a woman with her back turned to the camera in that picture. They said, well, that's them. That's
I
them in the
saw.
Marshall
I
Islands.
saw a picture of Justin Trudeau that looks just like Fidel Castro.
Right? So Justin Trudeau
Indistinguishable.
must be
So they
Fidel
must be
Castro.
the same person.
Yep.
So okay, but are they? Did sh- did they swoop in and kidnap her out of her plane,
I don't know.
or wait until she crash landed on an
Like
island and
conspiracy
then
theories,
find
Johnny,
her and see her?
like
Or
conspiracy theories, they never make any damn bit of sense. Well, one theory is that while she was in Lao New Guinea, she was captured, even though we have extensive documents from her, flight logs of taking off.
yeah,
Another theory is that when she crash landed, the Japanese rescued her. But
okay,
I call bullshit on that because if they had rescued her, they would not have held her captive. She is a world famous person.
yeah.
They would have gotten the global credit of picking
Oh
her up.
hell yeah!
They're not at war with the United States at this point. They would have been like,
No,
here's your
they were
first
like,
back,
check it out, bitches, we're heroes.
right? So
Look what we did.
it would have made no sense. So I don't think it doesn't. The other theory though is that they think that she might have been used as propaganda in what was called Tokyo Rose, which there were female Americans that were captured and were forced to do propaganda on Japanese radio. The problem with this one though, however, is close family members listened to every recorded broadcast of any Tokyo Rose, and
Yeah.
none of them identified any of the voices as hers. Which, I mean, you can make a mistake, I guess, but not likely.
No. No.
Then the theory
I
goes
mean,
on that
that's a weak sauce theory.
then the theory goes on that after the war was over, she somehow miraculously survived from, 1937 through World War II,
Yeah.
where the Japanese were oh so known to be, you know, friendly to any American POW.
Forgiving for their POWs.
No American
Hey,
POW died at Japanese hands.
but she was a woman.
Okay.
Women are treated differently.
In Japan? Better than
Yes.
them?
I
Yeah,
didn't say
okay.
better. Didn't say better.
They are treated differently. Yes,
Don't
they
put
are.
words in my mouth, Tommy. I said they're treated differently.
So the theory goes on that she survived, and then for some reason, after she was picked up by the Americans, they decided that we're gonna, change your identity to an Irene Craigmile Bolam and send you back to the United States.
Okay.
Why would we change your identity? I don't know. But this
Just
theory comes from a writer, Joe Kloss, who met the real Irene through a friend of Earhart and was convinced she looks just like an older version of Earhart.
well, how
I'm
about
going to put a
that?
picture up. She does not look
No.
anything like her. First off, her front teeth are together. So that right there is a dead
She
giveaway
probably got
that her dental records.
Invisalign, I would imagine.
Maybe you get the Invisalign done.
You don't even have to go see a doctor. They send you the mold and everything.
To put this finally to bed as a complete and total bullshit story, Irene herself would sue for libel and would win $1.5 million from Kloss, and his book was pulled from the shelves. So definitely
For
not her.
libel? Wait, she didn't win, did she?
No, she won.
Oh, that's some bullshit. Libel's like when you say bad about people.
Well, he
said she was a
Earhart.
world famous airplane pilot who
Right.
broke world records and has all sorts of
Well, I guess
medals.
maybe they claimed that she was a spy, so that might have been bad. I don't know.
All right. Well,
In the end, let's be honest. The likely story is what actually probably happened, in that she ran out of fuel, ditched the plane in the ocean, and drowned.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and then everything sank to the bottom of the ocean and was eaten by all of the horrifying things in the bottom of the ocean.
Especially in the Pacific, man.
Woof.
Sharks are abundant in the
Man,
Pacific.
F that whole entire ocean.
I mean, ask the guys from the Indianapolis how they managed to survive from the fucking sharks that ate them all.
Yeah, fuck the ocean. I am a solidly inland person. I want a landlocked state, or you can get the
Well,
hell out of my life.
well, Johnny, that's the story of Amelia Earhart. So, yeah.
All right, that's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to join us next week when we talk about the
The 1950s, Johnny,
1950s.
where we put to bed some of those, the boomers. I wish the things were as good as they were in the 50s. Well,
Yeah.
stay tuned.